Let's start with an essential truth. Healing cannot be rushed. If you're currently processing trauma, grief, or significant life changes, this message isn't about abandoning that journey prematurely. Real healing requires us to face our pain head-on, to sit with uncomfortable emotions, and to do the necessary work with proper support. The body and mind are wise. When we experience trauma or deep emotional wounds, they create protective mechanisms, like a friend who shows up exactly when we need them most. This friend, our pain response, taught us to be cautious, helped us recognize danger, and kept us safe when we were vulnerable. They weren't wrong to do so. In fact, they were exactly what we needed at the time. Think of this protective response like a security system installed during a crisis. When your home has been broken into, you need those extra locks, those alerts, that heightened awareness. These measures aren't excessive in the aftermath of violation. They're essential. They help you sleep at night. They help you function. They help you survive. But as time passes and healing progresses, we reach a crucial crossroads. Just as a broken bone needs a cast for protection, but eventually requires movement to regain strength, our emotional protective mechanisms can outlive their usefulness. The security system that once saved us might now be triggering false alarms, making us jump at shadows, keeping us isolated when connection is what we truly need. And here lies a crucial distinction between protective patterns that are still actively serving us and those that have become habitual constraints. Like a cast that remains too long on a healed limb, outdated protection doesn't just limit us, it can actually weaken what it once protected. Our emotional muscles atrophy under too much guarding. This is where many healing journeys become complicated. We've become so accustomed to our protective patterns that we mistake them for our personality. The hypervigilance that kept us safe becomes our default way of moving through the world. The walls that protected us become the bars of our own cage. The signs that we're stuck in outdated protection are subtle but significant. Perhaps you notice yourself automatically declining opportunities because you're still healing. Maybe you introduce yourself through your trauma story, leading with your wounds as if they're your most important characteristic. Or you might find yourself expertly articulating your pain patterns in therapy while unconsciously clinging to them like a familiar blanket. This brings us to a profound paradox in the healing journey. Our ability to intellectually understand our trauma doesn't automatically translate to emotional release. Many of us become eloquent scholars of our own pain, capable of naming every trigger, tracking every pattern, and explaining every reaction. We mistake this psychological fluency for actual healing. Understanding this difference is crucial. True healing isn't measured by how well we can explain our wounds, but by how freely we can move beyond them. It's not about forgetting the past, but about not being constrained by it. Just as a martial artist doesn't forget their training when they're at peace, we don't lose our hard-won wisdom by choosing to live beyond our wounds. Think of it like becoming an expert in describing a locked door while never reaching for the key. We can detail every scratch on its surface, explain the mechanism of its lock, and articulate why it needed to be closed in the first place. But at some point, we must ask ourselves, is understanding the door the same as walking through it? The ego finds comfort in this intellectual mastery because it maintains the illusion of progress while avoiding the vulnerability of actual change. We become like scientists studying our wounds under a microscope, forgetting that at some point we need to put down the microscope and live. Our trauma responses become so well articulated that we inadvertently turn them into our identity. This transformation of wound into identity is particularly seductive in our current culture of trauma awareness. While understanding and validating trauma is crucial, we risk creating a hierarchy of woundedness where our pain becomes our most interesting feature. We might find ourselves unconsciously maintaining our wounds because they've become our primary way of relating to others, our excuse for not taking risks, our explanation for every limitation. Here's where the path divides between those who are still genuinely processing trauma and those who have unknowingly chosen trauma as their home address. The difference lies not in the severity of the original wounds, but in our relationship to them. Are we still excavating necessary insights, or are we merely redecorating familiar pain? Post-traumatic growth becomes crucial to understand at this juncture. Just as a forest fire, destructive as it is, creates fertile soil for new life, our pain responses created the conditions for unprecedented growth. The question evolves from, how am I still hurting, to what has this experience enabled me to become? Consider how your journey has shaped you. The sensitivity that emerged from pain can become extraordinary empathy. The hypervigilance that protected you might have developed into remarkable intuition. The analysis of your own patterns might have given you unique insights into human nature. These aren't wounds anymore, they're hard-won wisdom. But wisdom doesn't require constant rehearsal of its origins. You don't need to keep telling the story of how you learned to walk in order to walk today. At some point, the lessons integrate, becoming part of who you are rather than something you must consciously carry. This integration is where true healing differs from intellectual understanding. Integrated healing is embodied, not just understood. It's the difference between knowing how to swim and actually feeling comfortable in deep water. It's the shift from constantly monitoring for danger to naturally maintaining healthy boundaries. The signs of readiness for completion are subtle but profound. You'll notice that you can discuss your past without becoming emotionally hijacked by it. You can recognize triggers without being controlled by them. You can feel vulnerable without feeling unsafe. Most importantly, you can imagine a future not defined by what hurt you. But this readiness often comes with its own form of grief. There's a peculiar mourning in letting go of our wounds, not because we want to keep hurting, but because these protective patterns have been faithful companions. They've been reliable, predictable, and in their own way, loving guardians. This brings us to the final step of healing, conscious completion. This isn't about denying what happened or pretending you're unaffected. Instead, it's about acknowledging that your protective responses, while once crucial, have taught you everything they needed to teach. Like a dedicated teacher whose work is done, they can now be thanked and released. The choice to be complete is both momentous and subtle. It's momentous because it requires us to trust that we can be safe without our familiar armor. It's subtle because it happens through small, daily decisions, choosing possibility over protection, presence over past, curiosity over caution. This completion requires radical self-trust. Before declaring yourself done, ask, can I honor my experiences without being defined by them? Have I learned what I needed to learn? Can I handle future challenges without armor? Does my worth exist independently of my wounds? If these questions create anxiety rather than calm knowing, more integration might be needed. Also, consider the nature of completion itself. It's not a perfect state of perpetual peace. It's the ability to dance with life's inevitable ups and downs without reverting to old protective patterns. It's knowing that while triggers may still arise, they no longer dictate your choices. It's understanding that sensitivity isn't the same as weakness, and that being affected doesn't mean being damaged. Your new story begins the moment you decide that your old one has ended. This ending isn't marked by perfect healing, but by the conscious choice to live as though healing is possible, present, and complete. It's about recognizing that while your past experiences shaped you, they don't have to confine you. Think of it like graduating from a school that taught you invaluable lessons. You don't forget what you learned, but you don't keep attending classes either. You take the wisdom forward while releasing the identity of eternal student. Your pain responses were excellent teachers, and now it's time to live what they taught you rather than continuously reviewing the curriculum. This transition often triggers resistance because it challenges the narrative we've invested years in cultivating. The ego protests, presenting evidence of past hurts as proof that we must remain vigilant and wounded. But consider this: true resilience isn't about maintaining perfect protection. It's about knowing you can handle whatever comes, even without armor. The invitation before you is clear but nuanced. Choose completion when you're truly ready, not when you're tired of the process. Your healing journey has served its purpose when you can hold both your wounds and your potential simultaneously, when you can acknowledge your past without being consumed by it, when you can feel triggered without being overwhelmed. In this completion lies a profound truth. Healing doesn't make us invulnerable. it makes us courageously open to life's full spectrum of experiences. We don't become immune to pain. We become confident in our ability to move through it without getting stuck. We don't forget our past. We simply stop letting it dictate our future. Let this understanding be your permission to be complete, because you've genuinely integrated your journey to lay down the identity of the eternal healer, not because you're bypassing pain, but because you've embodied its lessons so deeply that they've become wisdom. If these words resonate, share this message with someone who might need permission to be done healing, but include the wisdom about timing and readiness. We're not rushing healing, we're recognizing when it's complete. Thank you for watching. This is Ayla, signing off.